Today we have Dr. Kari Gleiser, a psychotherapist who works with people recovering from trauma, and she's the co-director of the Center for Integrated Health in Hanover, New Hampshire. I want to thank you for interviewing with the Foundation of Unity today and inviting us into your office. Thank you.
Thank you for...
Thank you very much, Kari, and we're very honored to speak with you. And we want to ask you, did you have any personal experience with Unity in your life?
Many. I mean, I think Unity is a characteristic and a way of being in many ways that can characterize many moments in your life. But I think especially given this moment in my life, I don't know if the camera can get my 9-month pregnant belly. We'll scan down for that. That this is a really kind of remarkable experience of unity, I think, where we all start in connection, in the most profound connection possible to another human being. It is the most primal of bonds and connections, and so I feel very blessed to be having a baby any moment now, and also to be interviewed and to be able to talk about unity and connection in this moment. So I think that this is a very moment of synchronicity for me to be able to talk about unity in this late stage of pregnancy. But I also wanted to talk about one other moment that was a very powerful experience of unity, which is when at age 19 I spent time in Calcutta, India, working with the Missionaries of Charity, and I was privileged enough to be able to work with very young children in an orphanage, and that experience, I think, taught me so much about how to be in connection with humanity and with suffering and with people from different cultures, and it was such a powerful experience for me. I think that taught me a lot about how to come out of myself and connect with other people, while at the same time maintaining enough boundary to not be overwhelmed by it and not be destroyed by it, because there's quite a lot of need and suffering in Calcutta. So I think that was a huge formative experience for me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. That's very meaningful. And from a professional perspective, how does unity impact your work and thoughts?
It's a good question, and it's interesting because I don't think of there being much of a boundary between professional and private life when it comes to unity, at least for me, because so much of how I work with people is based on connection and is based on the relationships that we can form and how we can harness those relationships to foster healing and growth for people. So basically, I work from an experiential model called AEDP, which stands for Accelerated Experiential Dynamic Psychotherapy. And one of the cornerstones of that therapeutic approach comes from attachment studies. So understanding how bonds between human beings, between mother and child, between husband and wife, between friends, between therapist and patient, are important vehicles for growth and exploration and healing. For me, there's not much of a division between how I try to be in my life and how I try to be in my profession. Of course, there are many different skills and strategies and professional boundaries when working with patients. But in terms of the underlying philosophy and unity, I really see the relationship, the genuine relationship, not working from within a role, not working from within a role as a therapist, but as a real human being, reaching out and seeing people in deep and compassionate ways and helping them to feel that security in ways that give them the courage to look at what happened to them, if they are trauma survivors, what they've lived through, what their strengths are, what their capacities are, what their resources are, and to really help unlock that so that they can grow and thrive in life. So unity is really, in a sense, at the core of what I do and how I see healing and how I try and spark healing for my patients, because I think ultimately it's something that unfolds, it's a process that unfolds within them, but that they need that bond and that connection in order to put that process in motion.
Beautiful, Kari. So you think unity is healing, or healing
Absolutely.
is unity?
Absolutely.
It is
I think
unbelievable,
that's,
beautiful thought.
yeah, it's a beautiful way of saying it, and I think for the individual, but also for communities. You know, if you see a community that has experienced a disaster, what lets people get through that without being traumatized is feeling a sense of connection and support and help from other people. If a community can rebound and coalesce and help each other, then it's going to be a much more resilient community than if they feel isolated or cut off or abandoned or forgotten. So I think it's also the key to global healing too. You know, healing for individuals, healing for communities, healing for nations.
Exactly, it's what we wanted actually to ask you next question. So what's your vision of unity in a global scale?
I do think that it has tremendous power to help heal communities, countries, and I think that the more we get connected through technology and through the internet and through, you know, these are vehicles for information, and if we can use those and take it to the next step, because there can be a lot that is superficial and fragmented and not human about that kind of information. So if there's a way that we can infuse that also with eye contact, with touch, you know, use that as a way to build bridges that let our humanity shine through, then, you know, then unity can almost be a complementary force to the technology that's going to connect us as a global entity.
Very much, very much.
Yeah, but I think without unity, the technology and all of our advances will just be cold and distancing. And because the one thing that I think people don't, I don't know if it's they don't grasp it or that it's hard to admit, is that there's something about connection that's very vulnerable, right? And so that there's a certain element of, I don't know if I'd call it fear necessarily, but trepidation in really deeply connecting with someone else's experience or with another human being. You have to come out of yourself and into another person's experience. And sitting in front of a computer and typing something can get lost in that translation. There's not that same level of vulnerability. There are a lot of barriers, I think, that can be very protective. So we can't forget to come out from behind those protections and really make contact in deep and personal and intimate ways. So I think, you know, that those are characteristics of unity, that there's a vulnerability and a fear that people have to face in order to have those deep connections that is really going to be healing.
Very insightful and meaningful.
Thank you.
When it comes to a contribution, obviously through the work that you're involved in, there's a contribution to bringing health, healing, unity. Is there a specific contribution that you'd like to make or could identify in that? Maybe a piece of the work that you do that is specifically of interest?
Yeah, I like to think that as therapists, as psychologists, when we help awaken healing processes in individuals, that there's also a kind of inspiration that goes along with that ripples out, you know, because I can only work with 20 people at once, you know, and you're not gonna, it's hard to think that you can change the world 20 people at a time, you know, but if more and more people can understand the power of connection, the power of unity, the power of really caring for and understanding each other, and that message can start to propagate outward. You know, if I treat a mother, then she treats her children, and those children have friends, and they have teachers, and, you know, that there can just start to be waves of transformation that happen in the world. And that, you know, maybe one day an important politician will be treated by someone from this approach and, you know, be inspired to enact more systems change, and you never know how these things get a critical mass or critical force and then, really take hold in the world. But that's my hope and my vision for it.
It's a beautiful vision.
Very.
Who you would like to interview the next?
It's interesting. I thought a lot about that question, and what came to my mind is two ideas. One, and I don't know why I kept coming back to this, if it's just a developmental phase in my own life, but I'd be so curious to see what children have to say about this. Children that are verbal enough, to talk, but, because they're so close to some other forces and, something more, I don't know, less jaded and more innocent and more pure. So I'd be fascinated to see what children at different ages would say about this. And then the other thought that I had is people from different cultures, that treat connection in different ways. Like in Western culture, we're so over-focused on autonomy and independence and making our fortunes and, being the best we can be. And I think that the notion of, community and family can get somewhat diluted in comparison to Asian cultures or Native American cultures, so that if you could interview people from different cultures and get their take on unity and connection, that might uncover different angles and different truths that could be very important.
Thank you so much for new inspirative thoughts. Thank you, Kari.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.